Welcome to the Two Trees Podcast. We're here to talk about angels and demons, ghosts, the pagan gods, and the weird corners of the Bible. We're talking about the beliefs of the ancient world, the way that they talked about the supernatural world, all to help you understand the people of the Bible and to be able to engage on a deeper level with the text of Scripture. But most importantly of all, we're here to show you Jesus. As Deuteronomy 10:17 describes him, the Lord your God is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, mighty and awesome.
Well, I'm excited to be here. This is John Dillon. I'm here with Martin Listener.
Hey, y'all.
And Rosemary.
Thank you.
Moeller.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
But as you can,
it's nice to be here, she said. This is a place to be.
As you can tell from the opening, I said last time when I was on the podcast that we were going to have a poll, and whoever got the most votes would be the one that intros the podcast from now on. So we had several votes, a handful of them that I made up in my head, and
thousands and thousands
and
of
nobody
imaginary people
that voted,
replied.
nobody that voted was related to me, but I won in a landslide. So that's
It was
why
a landslide.
I got to do the podcast intro again. So welcome everybody.
I like it.
Well, I was actually going to jump in there because I am going to invite everybody to, if you like the podcast, please tell people, share it on social media, maybe send a text to a friend, or if you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, go in there and leave a review. And while you're doing that, make sure you vote for Martin. I hear it's the thing
Amen.
that everybody is doing these days.
And if it's something that's a little more fitting for you, which Rose would back me up on this, take an ad out in the paper if you need to. But just share the word about us however you
how
can.
How great you are?
Yeah,
Okay.
however you can. Get it out there.
I'm feeling a little bit something here because I do think it's ironic that I encourage you to share everything on social media when I don't have social media. I don't even know how to, I don't have Facebook, and I don't hardly know how to leave a review. But I really want everybody else to do it. So,
But she knows how smart the people that listen to this are.
Yeah.
and
Is that like
is
a-
more than
They will
willing
be able
do
to
that.
Do you
figure
feel
it
better
out.
now that you've confessed?
no, I was actually thinking about taking out an ad. I have done that before. I have literally called our local place and put an ad in it before.
Etch it into a tree somewhere with a pocket knife. It
It
would
came
be
out
fitting.
in the Stillwater Advertiser.
Smoke signals.
Oh, I love it.
Right.
Yeah, well, things have been going really good here. We had several churches get together this past Sunday, and we had a really fun baptismal service. It's always fun when we can get the churches together. So Nick Church, who's on the podcast every once in a while, and is really just a great friend of ours, he brought his church out, and they did some baptisms. We had some. Jacob's Church came on Thursday, and they had some baptisms. And so it's really been celebratory as far as my life as a pastor in the area. It's been a lot of fun. I love baptisms. There's something exciting about the confession of faith, talking with everyone about what we're doing. And I love that we do cookouts and stuff afterwards. We turn baptisms into a gigantic party, and I love that.
Well, more good news. I'm sure you know about it, but Nick mentioned this morning in church that we have 4 more people that are going to get baptized next week.
What?
And yeah, all of them are youth, teenagers
That's
around
great.
there. So even more fantastic news on that regard. So you'll be happy again this weekend, John.
I like that. I also like, oftentimes when a church does baptisms, other people start thinking about it. You know, maybe I should be doing something like that. It stirs up good conversations. Parents, you know, you should be talking to your kids about it. Husbands, chat with your wife, or wives, tell your husbands. You know, just...
I thought you meant husbands talk to your wives.
Like more than one.
Did I say it wrong? No.
However many you have.
No, I just heard it wrong.
Just the one. If you have more than one, shame on you for being...
Review your life choices.
Yes, review your life choices. But so we're going to be talking today about the spiritual world and the inhabitants of the spiritual world. In the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, we get what I've always thought should be the end of chapter 1, but somebody with a gigantic number 2 decided that it was going to go in the second chapter. And it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done." And that line there, that he had finished the heavens and the earth and all the host of them, has spurred my curiosity for a really long time, because I know that in the physical world, in the earth, God made a tremendous variety of life. Not just mankind, but there's animals, there's plants, there's so many different types of life. And I've always wondered if the heavens also have a diversity of life as well. Obviously not physical because it's in a supernatural world. But I have a hard time imagining that God peopled heaven with only one type of being. And that's how I used to think, like there were angels, like with great big swan wings and glowing Cheerios over their head, who just played harps all day. And that was all that was going on in heaven as they sat on their clouds eating cream cheese bagels.
I want to know exactly how old you were when you thought that.
Oh, in my
Give
20s.
it to me.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Cream cheese bagels in your 20s?
Well, I mean, there was a commercial that helped with
Yeah,
that.
Philadelphia. Shout out. They can sponsor us if they want.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't have TV in my 20s. So
The Anabaptist way.
Exactly.
Yes.
And to this day, I hate commercials. Do
Well,
not watch them. Do
That's
not
the best
listen to
part of the
them.
Super Bowl is the commercials.
Mm-hmm.
I don't watch the Super Bowl.
I disagree with that, but it is the best part of commercials. It's the Super Bowl
The
commercial.
Browns are never in the Super Bowl ever, so I have to have something to be
Yeah.
excited about. No, but I think if you, I just think my thoughts of heaven were very small. That it was a place where there was like a big worship hall, and God was there, and everyone sang all the time, and the idea of it being a world never occurred to me really until I read The Last Battle. And C.S. Lewis's last book there of the Chronicles of Narnia, and the whole concept of just like this world is immense, the world that is to come is also immense. And so then I wonder, what kind of things would you find in the supernatural world? And the Bible gives us a few glimpses behind that curtain, and all of them I think are really interesting, but they also are words that have been packaged with modern myth or art. And so most people's picture of things like angels and cherubim looks very different from the biblical description of angels and cherubim. Cherubim to most people are naked babies that are just up there looking cute, whereas in the Bible they're throne guardians. They're beast-like in appearance, immensely ferocious. Angels, again, my thought about angels was always that they were really beautiful women singing songs. And then when you read the Bible, you find, these are more like ambassadors of the court of heaven, or sometimes angelic warriors that are on mission. It was just very different.
Yeah, and that's kind of something that stuck with me, in my recent, when I was in my 20s, Rose, to go for
okay.
that. But
Hear it.
also, just the idea that anytime someone is approached by an angel, the first thing they say is, don't be afraid, right? Or fear not. Somehow they're like telling them not to be afraid. And I'm like, why would you be afraid if it's, a good-looking woman with a harp or a guy with an arrow with
And
heart-shaped
a cream
arrows?
cheese bagel.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
even, when I used to have these little cards that were different parts of the Bible, it was kind of, a biblical way of a trading card game like Pokemon or something like that to get the interest of young kids like myself. And there was some of, like Michael and Gabriel, and they were like real strong warrior, like off of 300, the movie 300, and they're really cool looking guys. And I'm like, I wouldn't be afraid of him. I'd be like, you're awesome. Give me your autograph. So it never really dawned on me why they would have to tell people to not be afraid. Mm-hmm. But then when you think about it with the way you just described, it's like, yeah, I would be terrified if that showed up.
Well, and if you guys remember, wow, it was probably back in the 90s, and I just remember that you are both men, so this may not have really made an impression on you.
My Little Pony?
No.
Polly Pocket?
No. Oh, my word. What do you think I did in the 90s? I was like a teenager. I went to places.
I'm not judging you. I'm just throwing out some options.
I went to places like Kirkland's at the mall, and they were everywhere. There were these two little cherubs on everything. They were on calendars. They were on walls. They looked bored, like they kind of like rested their hands
I
on their
remember
chin
those
and their.
guys.
Yeah, you remember those two?
Yeah.
Nobody's scared of them. You know,
No.
I mean, eventually everybody garage saled them or sent them to Goodwill, but for a while they were a real thing, and that's definitely not what an angel probably is.
No, and I think an ancient person hearing us talk about cherubim like that would be really confused. Where did you get that idea? And so rather than looking at every single culture out there and how we think of different supernatural beings, I thought what we do is we take a look at several places in the Bible that do talk about angels and define the word and how they're discussed, because we got to know the Bible's it's a supernatural book, and it contains characters in its pages, and a lot of them are supernatural beings. Even humans are clothed spirits, right? Mm-hmm. So there's an element of us that is more than meets the eye. And there's a long way between ancient culture and modern day culture. And a lot of things that they assumed we don't even think about. and things that we assume never entered to their heads at all. For instance, angels, they're not Christmas tree ornaments in the ancient world. Like, we've made them into an image of beauty and feminine charm, and really stripped them of their identity as they appear in Scripture. I'm not saying there aren't any attractive angels or none of them have, a really great singing voice. I am saying, though, that we have made them friendlier. Something that is intended to terrify has become something that is comforting for people to think about. Cherubs really appear mostly on Valentine's Day cards or things like that. Whereas in the ancient world, you would find them in front of a king's throne or in front of a temple. And they were there to make you stop and say, I don't know if I dare go in there. It's protected by beings that look like this. That is terrifying. And so it's my hope that by looking at these verses, what we're going to do is we're going to come away with concepts of the ancient culture and bring those into our modern day readings of Scripture. And so we're obviously not going to hit everywhere in the Bible that talks about angels, because that is a whole lot of places. But we are going to talk about a whole bunch of them. And so hopefully this will serve to spur you on to go out and make a list of passages in the Bible that talk about angels and do your own study. Think about it. What do you notice? What do you observe? What jumps to mind? What does it remind you of? And so part of our hope with these podcasts isn't really to tell you what you're supposed to think, as much as it is to just be involved in your life and thinking with you. It's not our job to give you note cards and this is the answer, but just to say, this is what we're thinking about. These are the things we're excited about, and we've got questions and things that we notice. And I'm having a lot of fun, even if no one else is. And so we're going to be looking at angels today. So when you think of an angel, Martin, are you afraid of angels?
No. Now I probably would be a lot more than before. But like you mentioned, the first thing you think of is just this thing with light shining behind it, and you got to have a halo, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know where the halo came from, but you can't be an angel unless you have a halo. Every movie description of it, or even Looney Tunes, when one of them dies and goes upwards, they get a halo that pops up above them.
Right.
And something along those lines. So to me, it was just always an idea of something that was good, or something that was bringing good news, really. I mean, and a lot of times throughout the Bible, I would say most of it is something about good news that's coming, or it's bringing a message from God that's something that you want. So there's always a positive spin on it. Would I be afraid of what they look like now with knowledge that I have? Probably. But it would be almost an excitement as well, because there's something good that's going to be coming from this.
That's interesting, because the word angel is a shortening of a Greek word in the New Testament, angelos. But in the Old Testament, it's the word malak. And the word is usually used by modern day readers, and sometimes in the Bible, as a catch-all phrase for good spirit beings. And we kind of use that to mean a tremendous amount of variety. Some people will talk about seraphim as angels, or cherubim as angels, or the watchers as angels. And they just use this one word as though it was like a cookie cutter that God stamped out, and there's bazillions of these guys up there just waiting for God to say, go down and tell Billy Bob that I said such and such. And most of them probably never get the opportunity to, until a bell rings and the angel gets its wings and we have the whole White Christmas moment happening.
That is not White Christmas.
It's not White Christmas. You're right. It's A Wonderful Life.
It is A Wonderful Life.
I wish I was better at pop culture references. I'm trying so hard.
I didn't get the whole Philadelphia cream cheese reference, so,
That's true.
Yeah, I don't win. It's okay.
I'm better than you. I know about cream cheese.
Ish.
Yeah, it's not a species identifier. Angel is a job description. It's a spiritual being that's been given a mission. And so when that happens, it's proper to call that being an angel. Anything could be an angel if you are given a message to take. Even a human being can be an angel. Not when he dies or she dies, but the job description of messenger is really what that word malak means. And the concept appears in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. It carries the idea of an ambassador from a king's court, bringing official word from the king to his representative in the field. And so if you have some spiritual being carrying a message, the proper word for that in Hebrew is the phrase melech. There's a lot of other phrases that are used to describe the angelic court, but that's a big one. And typically it means, to send a message or to be on a mission. One of the prophets is actually named after this, Malachi. His name literally means messenger. And so when we're looking at this, it isn't something that is just a species, like there's this winged variety of human floating around in space out there. It's a job description. It's that they do something. And when they're doing this thing, they are an angel.
So, John, I wish I knew the reference here because I probably should. When it says you could be entertaining angels, is that, I guess that puts a different perspective on that verse for me with the angels. Does that mean we could be entertaining human beings that have a message that they're supposed to be bringing from God?
It's possible.
That just...
It could also mean that you're entertaining a spiritual being,
right,
who is given a message. It's difficult for us because we think of human beings as like a dime a dozen. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just some guy out there. C.S. Lewis wrote a great sermon. It was called The Weight of Glory. And in the sermon, he talks about how you have never met a mere mortal, that every single soul is of immense value and worth. And if you were to meet it after 1,000,000 years in glory, you would be tempted to fall on your face in abject honor of this beautiful thing that's out there. And so even a human messenger is supposed to be treated with honor and love and compassion. But there is in Hebrew this element, or in the book of Hebrews, this element that's a supernatural being on his way somewhere. And that actually goes back to the Old Testament when Abraham is out in his front yard under an oak tree. And all of a sudden, who shows up but the Lord and his angels, and he feeds them. Mm-hmm. And there's this concept that has been part of culture since the very beginning of storytelling, really, that there are things moving around that we don't know. I don't know if that helps with your question or not.
No, it does. No, I think it does a lot. It's just it puts a different perspective on that. And exactly what you mentioned, how every human being is much more intense than we give to them nowadays. And I feel like that really shines a light into, how we should be treating other people as if they are these angels, right? And it's a different light on that word to the point beyond a physical appearance of what the angel is, but the desire and the reason that these angels are around us or even created in the first place. So I think that's just big for me. I hope other people are taking it the same way that I just received it there. So that's...
Now, while Martin was talking, our good friend Steve Deaton walked in the door. Hey, everybody. Hang on a second. Say that again.
I said, hey, everybody.
And so Steve has been having house church at his house.
That's right.
And he threw everyone out and said, I must away to the Two Trees podcast. And so even though you're not here when we started, we're super glad that you're here.
What are we, like 2 minutes in?
Oh, 20 minutes in.
But I'm like really show prepped here. So.
Obviously, I assume that you looked at the file that maybe had the topic in it.
I'm not even sure that you sent a file, John.
Oh, I think I sent it to other people.
He did send a file, and I just want to point out that it has the most confusing chart. It's like a cross between a pie chart and a flow chart and like a thermostat. It's like got blues and reds and angels and envoys, and I'm like, I have literally no idea how to read this, and half of it's in Hebrew.
Yeah, it sounds like something a teacher would do.
Well, I assume that you guys all were blessed by that chart and that it made sense in my head, so it would make sense in yours.
But you didn't text it out?
No, I texted it. I didn't know that you were coming.
Okay.
I thought Jacob was going to be able to be here, but
gotcha.
We don't need Jacob anymore.
Yeah, you gotta.
That's
what you got bench players for.
The closest thing we could find to an angel. So you called Steve, right?
Oh wow!
Yes. Fear not.
Don't be afraid.
Deaton is here. So let's actually look at that text that you were talking about, Martin. In Hebrews, there's this line that says that we should be polite to strangers because we might be entertaining angels unaware. That is a reference to the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, Abraham is out lounging, and all of a sudden, angels come to his house. And Abraham feeds them. He talks with them. He speaks to the Lord. And these angels are then sent on a mission to Sodom and Gomorrah to rescue Abraham's nephew, Lot. And so let's pick it up in verse 1 of chapter 19.
The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom.
That may be confusing for people because we don't sit in gates here. Like gates in the ancient world, there were actually chairs set up in this space, and that's where the judges or the important people would sit. And so he's there, and he recognizes these people as not human, as something else. It doesn't tell us what they looked like. It doesn't tell us anything about them other than he is sitting there, and then his knowledge of what's happening is spot on. Keep going.
When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way."
So he's looking at these guys, right? And he says, he gets up out of his chair where he's the boss, and he kneels down. He's on his face before these people, and that's a sign of honor. And then he says to him, "Come to my house and do what?
Stay the night,
Stay
wash
the
your
night."
feet.
Do angels' feet get dirty?
I mean,
Do they have feet?
Can their robes get spaghetti stains on them? Like, what's going on here? Is this a
Traditionally
supernatural
speaking, no.
being or not? And then they said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, and so they turned aside to him, and he entered his house, and he made a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they what?
Ate.
They ate. And so looking at this gives us a little bit of a different view of angels than appears in most places in the Bible. For instance, when the angels appear to the shepherds and they say, "Great news, there's a baby," the angels don't say, "Hang on, buddy, we've got some beef jerky here, and we want you to share with it." We don't think of angels as being capable of participating in human fleshly activities like eating or walking or getting your feet dirty. And so there seems to be a way in which these supernatural beings are able to also be physical beings. Now, how does that work? I don't know entirely. But these angels ate with Abraham, and then they move right on and they eat with Lot. And so this super spiritual concept that we sometimes have, that angels are just spirit beings, that they're not capable of interacting with the physical world in any way, is contradicted straight up by stories in the Bible.
That was something I was going to mention to you also, because like if human beings are spirits or, have an eternal soul, and this is just a shell that we inhabit, right? Our earthly body. I'm just trying to figure out how an angel would take on an earthly body, and would all the different types of spiritual beings, like you mentioned earlier, there's a plethora of creation in the heavenly realm as well. Would they choose their own spiritual body when they come to here? Now, this is a far out question, I know that, but would they be able to take on a different form if they needed to, or do they have a designated physical form as well, the same way the human beings kind of have a designated physical form?
I would love to have an answer to that,
right?
And I don't, but that's a cool question.
But it just gets to me because it seems that the different types of spiritual creatures have a designated form, like you talked about the beasts, or the way that they are protective of this and that. And it seems to me that that was assigned to them at their creation. So when they were created by the Almighty, He gave them these representational bodies that allowed them to do what they were designed to do. And I feel like that's a mirror image of how He created us as human beings. He gave us a body which then allows us to, through gifts and talents, do what we are supposed to do.
So we're really used to thinking that way about human beings. Like, we have a soul, and we don't really think about what our soul will look like in the world that's yet to come. It doesn't come up very often. But when it comes to the angelic hosts, we're not told a whole lot about their creation. We're told in Genesis 2 that the Lord did create them, that He peopled the heavens and He peopled the earth. But there are also moments like this where we see that the angelic hosts are capable of existing in both realms, just as a human is capable of existing in both realms. And so I don't know exactly how this works, but I do know that what the Bible says about it is that this happens. And so this then leaves us with a problem. You can either say, "I don't understand this and this isn't important," or you can say, "I don't know it, but I do know how the Bible talks about it."
Sorry. I'm thinking about two things in this passage. First, I had to think of when it talks about Lot sitting at the gate, and this is a common theme, I think, in Scripture. Other people said at Gates. But it reminds me of, at least in our corner of the Midwest, like at any given morning at 6:30 at any given gas station, there's like 5 or 6 chairs and guys sitting on a bench, or you know, the one local here, they use camping chairs or whatever. So it just reminded me of that. But also I'm thinking of like Jesus's body post-resurrection seems a lot like the angels in this description, where he seemed to be a very physical being or very spiritual being, but had physical properties as well. I just wonder if there's a connection to that.
Yeah, I think so. I think there has to be. That the places in the Bible where we get reference to how things operate in the supernatural world, we get the impression that there's a great more possible than you would at first assume. Jesus walks through walls, almost like the walls aren't real enough to stop him.
But then sits down and eats with them.
And then he sits down and eats with them. The ability to, it's not less than. It's more than. But when we think of ghosts or spirits, we think of them as insubstantial, that they're not real enough. And the Bible seems to be talking about humanity as though we're not real enough, that this supernatural type of being is able to do more than we are, not less.
That's a real key into The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis.
I was going to say that too.
That's probably
It's
my
very-
biggest takeaway from that book, was the thought of, oh, I'm less of a human than what I am actually created to be.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the state that
I think he was spot on.
That was really, really.
That's such a cool idea, though. Sorry, I know we're dwelling on it, but you know, when you see it in a movie or a show, that's when someone knows that they have died because they try to sit down and they can't. Right? They fall through the chair, or they. So there's definitely.
But somehow they can walk on the floor.
Yeah,
Right.
but there's definitely this underlying tone in us, I think, Westerners, that are like, yeah, well, an angel or a spirit can't do what we can do, so they're a lesser, you know, entity because of that, or you become lesser when you die because you don't have this physical body. But in fact, it's the complete opposite. So I think that's a big point.
The psalmist talks about how God was made a little lower than the angels when he took on human flesh. It's not that we're more than these things. It's that we're blinded to part of the kingdom. This supernatural aspect of who and what we are is taken from us. We don't see it. It doesn't mean that it isn't real or that they're not capable of interacting with it. They just don't. In the book of Genesis, when you have the sons of God come down and procreate with women, many people will tell you, no, that couldn't happen because those are spirits. And I think it's absolutely possible because the Bible talks about spirits being able to do lots of things. They can eat, they can walk, they have bodily function. But there's lots of other places where the supernatural world and the human world seem to overlap. One of my favorites, actually two of my favorites, have to do with a guy named Jacob. And Jacob is a snake, all right? Jacob is not a nice guy. The whole story of Jacob is about how a snake became a man and became a human, Israel himself. And so we're going to take a look here at 2 instances in Jacob's life where in his physical walking around, he seems to have come upon a place where the angelic hosts were active. Would one of you guys take a look at Genesis 28, verses 10 through 19?
I will do this. This is a long one, I think. Yeah. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! There is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz, or almond tree, at the first.
Now, this is a story that we've all heard before, but it has certain elements that are weird. First of all, it's not normal to use rocks as pillows.
No.
This isn't saying that like Jacob had no access to sheep. You know, he couldn't get a good fleece. He left in such a hurry that he didn't pack his My Pillow or whatever it is, you know, that he was dragging around with him. This is though a custom of people seeking access into the supernatural world, seeking an omen or seeking a sign. And that's to lay your head on a stone and to try to slip into like a trance-like state. And I don't know that that's what Jacob is doing here, but it shares a lot of similarities with this ancient custom. And so as he's sleeping on this stone, he realizes that he is at the gate of God. He is at the place where heaven and earth are touching, and that there is this great staircase, and there are angels going up it and angels coming down it. And he looks at this and he says, my goodness, this is amazing. But if you stop and think about it, what exactly are the angels doing? Why are they going up it? Why are they coming down? There's this entire species of being, this supernatural creature involved in a job or on a mission or with a purpose that we don't know about. What exactly? My job is to go up and down these stairs forever to give the appearance of busyness. I have a hard
government job.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing this.
I was just thinking of, there's a short poem, The Grand Old Duke of York.
Oh yeah,
He had, 10,000 men. He marched them to the top of the hill and marched them down again.
Yeah.
You go where you're told.
yeah,
you know?
but that is also kind of. It doesn't make the Duke of York look great.
It does not.
It doesn't.
On the other hand,
And so, like, imagine like God created these beings, and He says, "Your entire purpose is to be the stairmasters. You are to go up and down these stairs. No one will see you, but you're going to go up and down them." No, this is.
I bet they have awesome calves.
Well, if they, yeah. But this idea is that things are busy on the other side. There's a tremendous amount of traffic going to and coming from. Now, this idea of the stairway or the ladder is something straight out of Mesopotamian culture. The stairway of the ziggurat. And high atop the ziggurat, that's where the god dwelt. And the priests went up and down serving the Lord. And when you read the book of Genesis, you get this idea that Adam and Eve are called to work and to keep the garden. And then the priests of Israel are asked to work and to keep the tabernacle. It would seem that they have supernatural counterparts on the other side as well. That these aren't just interchangeable imaginary beings. That each of these beings is made by God on purpose and for a purpose, just as we are. And he looks at this, and I think it's really interesting that it happens in a place called the almond tree. This is yet another instance where a tree is important to the story. Now, he renames it the house of God, but it is a place of great beauty. An almond tree is a gorgeous tree. I don't know if you guys have ever seen an almond tree in bloom, but it's one of the most beautiful. Go ahead, Rose. You look like you're thinking on
I was
something.
actually going to say, when we were in Israel, the very first day, we were like fresh off the plane and they were showing us almond trees. And I was so not very awake, but I still remember the lady standing there. She had a beautiful British accent and she was telling us all about almond trees and their symbolism in the Bible. And that was one of my favorite things that I heard over there. And I buried the memory until right now when you said that. I'll have
There's
to
a
revisit
tremendous
my notes.
amount of symbolism. Now, it seems that this gate of God is not fixed to a physical place. It seems to Sinai seems to be something like this. Later on, we see it in a couple other places. The temple in Jerusalem, and so I don't think that it's stuck in a position like a physical position is here. But there is a very real connection between these points. And so he sets up the stone and he anoints it. This is a religious ceremony.
I have a question, and I don't want to jump in because I kind of not sure 100% where all you're going with this, but they're ascending and descending, and we talked about them eating and possibly procreating. So they must have some kind of a physical form that looks like a human at some level. But yet the cherubim that are on top of the mercy seat
Are not human-like at all.
Right. They have wings that stretch like, 7 feet or something. I forget what it is in front of them. And so explain to me really quickly, Angels 101, why do some of them look like human beings and some of them do not? But
Because I think an angel is not a species of
Right.
being. It is a job description.
So how many different species, hierarchy, job descriptions of angels are there?
I would love to know the answer to that question because my imagination says a lot.
Okay.
And just like God created an abundance of life on this side of the supernatural world, I think it would be entirely fitting to assume that God was just as creative on the other side of creation as well. And so whether or not all dogs go to heaven is kind of moot. Like, I have no doubt that God cares for his creatures and his people, but the creation of God is not fully understood by mankind. There are types of being. The cherubim, for instance, are not described in human form. Neither are the seraphim. And there's dispute as to whether these are the same thing or not. But angels are typically described as looking like humans, as men.
I would just have to question when you talk about the ladder and these poor angels that are walking or climbing up and down constantly, bringing messages or whatever they're to do, and then you look at these others that are just sitting outside the gate protecting it, and they have wings. Wouldn't you think the messenger would maybe want some wings, and the other guys could just be sitting there not moving?
Yeah, well, and this is where it gets weird, okay? Is he seeing something? And how does a human see a spirit? Like, there's something that is to them like matter that isn't. And so I don't even know if having wings really matters in that sense. Like, they're not pushing oxygen underneath them to get some liftoff here. But most angels, as a matter of fact, I can't think of an instance in the Bible where an angel is described as winged.
And that's where, to me, the question would arise is how much does the physical form have anything to do with the angel or the abilities of the angel or anything like that? Because we think of wings for flight, right? There's very few creatures on earth that have wings and can't fly. There's a lot more of them that can because of it. And so when we put a logic train together of like, hey, these guys are going up and down from heaven to earth, they might want a way of transportation that's not walking. That would be a lot easier. But that's because we're thinking of what a physical form can do for these
and we're
creatures.
thinking in terms of distance. What does it mean to walk into heaven? Because heaven isn't a space. It's not as though like it's a little left of the moon. You know, if you just keep on
Second
climbing
star
up
to
there,
the right and straight
Yeah.
on
Straight
till
on.
morning.
it's an other thing to walk from one reality into the other. How far is that? I have no idea. But this seems to have been something that Jacob could understand. God presented this in a way that he could understand. And so visions, and that's what this is a vision.
Well, does that go back to your, you said earlier that the ladder had connections to the Mesopotamian culture. So this is maybe perhaps just a way that God is using the culture around Jacob to show him something.
And when we talk about the cherubim in particular, we're going to get into this because the cherubim are described as four-faced, multi-winged. The seraphim are described almost like fiery serpents, like with wings, but they don't bring a message. And so there is this tremendous amount of description that's there. But is it a physical description, or is this God representing a supernatural reality in a way that a physical being can understand? And I'm almost left wondering if I even have the vocabulary to talk about this. I don't even know how I would describe this. How do I draw a picture of something that's non-physical?
You'd have to speak in Old Solar.
Old Solar.
That would help you so
Yes,
much.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let's look at another instance in Jacob's life where angels pop up. This is Genesis 32, verses 1 through 5. And Deaton, you were late, so you
Yes.
have to read.
Okay. Starting at verse 32, or
No,
chapter
verse-
32,
yes.
verse 1.
Yeah.
Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of that place, just say it for me, please.
Mahanaim.
Mahanim?
Sure.
Mahanim, sure. Okay. Two camp. It means two camps. That's what's in parentheses. This is God's camp. So he called the name of the place two camps. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, and female servants. I have sent them to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight."
So Jacob is coming home. This is the end of that prophecy that God gave to Jacob earlier. I'm going to bring you home, and you're going to come home blessed. And so on his way home, he camps, and his people are all there with him. And it says that angels, plural, of God met him. And when Jacob sees them, he says, oh man, this isn't just two angels. It seems as though he is aware that this is the camp of God. Now, this is not a camp like you and your buddies went backpacking over the weekend, and God was like, well, I got to hike out there and meet Jacob. And so he took a couple commandos out there with him, and he was like, all right, we're going to meet you there. This is the idea of a wandering Bedouin chieftain. This is the camp. This is the home of God. The people of God in the heavens have met me here. And he calls this place two camps, one physical and one supernatural. Do angels have a life like this? It seems so. That they have a purpose, that there is an entire life happening behind the scenes of this physical world. And it's interesting what happens in verse 3. It then says that Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau. That word messengers is the same word. He sent his own messengers. Now, it's probably not actual spiritual angels. He probably sends, Gunther and Tobias out there to, I don't know, I made them up.
Are those really the names that you think angels, or Bedouin
Listen,
people,
but when you meet the
Gunther?
angel named Gunther and the other one named Tobias and you doubt, they're going to be very offended.
I hope they're wearing red plaid shirts because that's what Gunther sounds
They're up there
like.
listening, saying, "Finally, we got some recognition."
I
from
have no
somebody,
idea.
you know?
I totally made that up. No one's out there like the Angel Gunther. I understand. Apologies to anyone.
10 years
named
later,
Gunther.
there's a
Your
whole
name
cult
came
to
mind.
Angel Gunther.
I hope not. No, I like that name. And so, but it's this play on the word. There is a Lord here, and there is a Lord of Lords here. There is a supernatural component to this, just as there was at Bethel, where there was the gate of a city not made with hands, where there were servants of God in action, moving up and down in service of God. That's happening again here, just before Jacob goes to meet Esau.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah.
Just context. Is this right after? I mean, maybe I'm thinking this just because of the way you have it in your outline. But is this happening right after the ladder is seen?
My outline is flawless and without problem.
I realize that.
No, it's very much later after
Okay.
that. Years and years have passed. So that was in Genesis 28, and this is in Genesis 32.
Okay.
So quite
it's
a bit
just
has
the way
happened.
it reads that Jacob went on his way. I'm like, oh wait, did he
Yeah.
just get up from the
No. That would have been
Hard Rock
really cool.
Cafe?
So let's jump a little bit further here. This is a passage where we see an angel interacting with the physical world, not in a beneficial way, not in bringing just a message, but in bringing judgment and defense. And it's the book of 2 Chronicles 32, verses 20 through 21. Martin, do you mind grabbing that one?
I will, but it indicates that it starts in 21 due to
You're right.
your flawless thing here. So, starting in verse, I believe, 21. And the Lord sent an angel who cut off all the mighty warriors and commanders and officers in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of his face to his own land. And when he came into the house of his God, some of his own sons struck him down there with a sword.
Now, this is a pretty cool parallel. It's supposed to be read in one piece with two parts. And the first part is God is going to defend Israel, and he does that by sending a warrior, sending a champion, an unseen supernatural being who defeats the Assyrian army. He seems to kill the officers, is really what takes place here. And so that is, again, not the way we think about angels. So when an angel says, fear not, it's partially because you're dealing here with a being of great strength and power and is dangerous. Is dangerous. And so these aren't things that are cute and cuddly.
It's not always like the best day of your life to see an angel.
No, I think as a matter of fact, people say fear not because your initial reaction is terror in having encountered this. Now, what happens then, if you'll notice, is that the king of Assyria goes back to the house of where?
His
His
God.
God.
It doesn't say he went back to his house. He returns to his God. Here is the parallel. God is faithful, but the house of the king of Assyria's God is faithless. Who is it that strikes down the king?
His own son.
His own sons. This is a description or a comparison between the evil court of the dark and the court of the king of righteousness. The Lord is faithful. And here you get an instance of the very people who should be faithful to the king are the ones that cut him down. And so there's a bit of a polemic happening here as the authors are making fun of the evil that is Assyria. Now, does that mean that all angels are good and loving and pure and incapable of messing up? Because if that's the case, I would love to be like that. I can mess up better than anyone that I know. But if you read the book of Job, we get an instance of a little bit more down-to-earth understanding of how angels operate. Rose, would you read Job 4:18?
Even in his servants he puts no trust. In his angels he charges with error.
What do you think?
His angels he charges with error. I would say they are fallible. Exhibit A, Satan. You know.
What message was Satan given?
I want to be like God. And when it didn't work out so well for him, he came down here and told
Yeah, but that's not a
Eve.
message that God gave him. That was one that he came
No,
up
it's
with
not.
himself. So here again, I'm totally comfortable doing that, but it's because we use that word like a giant catch-all. Supernatural being. Now, this is talking about holy angels. Is it possible for an angel to make a mistake?
Well, I guess up until tonight, I didn't think so. But
Yeah,
you know,
that's-
Like, there's a difference between
Learn me
making a
here.
mistake and willfully walking in open rebellion,
right.
right? Just because
think
you've
so.
erred doesn't mean, like, is an angel like, they know the answers to every math problem, like they're omniscient. No, that's God that's omniscient. There is a sense in which the Lord has been betrayed by angels before, that there is an element here where the Lord looks at the angelic courts and he recognizes that there is rebellion in the ranks. There's also the capability of error.
So can you point to an example in Scripture where an angel makes a mistake?
Job 4:18.
Yeah, that's where I would go.
Oh.
No, we're not given a whole lot of information here.
It's
But
Gunther.
I have
Gunther is
always-
the one
Always
that messed
Gunther.
up.
Leave Gunther alone.
But
Yeah.
John, you look at the previous passage where this guy comes in and just can take out anybody. I know there's other passages where angels have swept down entire armies, with just one swing of the sword. It seems like, and there's the passage in Hebrews. I think it's Hebrews where they says man was created a little lower than the angels. So there's this idea I think implanted, at least in my head, and maybe others, that angels are above us, and that automatically puts the idea of like they can't fail or they can't do any wrong, or God trusts them enough with all this power that they're going to do what is right in the eyes of us. And it's an interesting take on it because even like was mentioned just a little while ago that Satan is a fallen angel, but Satan never had a message, right? So he wasn't an angel.
So he's not an angel, right?
He's a spiritual being that has fallen and has
It's just
rebelled.
a weird way we use the word.
So it's an interesting change in that, but to think that they could make a mistake, I mean, it just makes you think of the U.S. Postal Service, right? They're sending messages, but there can be mistakes that happen through the post office.
Sure, it's
a lot.
possible. I'm simply what I'm trying to do here is not to say like don't trust angels. What I'm trying to do here is to say that angels aren't God. Mm-hmm. It's not the same thing to say, well, God is perfect and he doesn't make mistakes, therefore angels are perfect and they don't make mistakes.
Or could an angel be defeated? You talk about
Yeah.
the Prince of Persia. It takes 21 days for him to get to
There is a sense in which, like, if that angel couldn't fail, why did it take 21 days?
right.
There were things that he did or tried to do, and he was defeated. He was challenged by another being of equal power. When the angels fall in Genesis 6, that's a big mistake. Boy, they should not have done that. And they're judged for it. There is a very real sense in which these aren't just interchangeable holy beings without personality, without desires, without interests, without culture. There is a whole other world waiting for us on the other side of this one that is infinitely bigger and better and more wonderful than what we've experienced so far. We are blinded to this, and one day we won't be. Look at Psalm 103, verse 20.
Bless the Lord, O you his angels, you mighty ones who do his word, obeying the voice of his word.
That's what they're supposed to do. What does it mean to do his word?
Act out what he tells you to do. I
Yeah, this
guess.
makes sense for a messenger. You're supposed to take the word to where I tell it to go. And this is also kind of what a prophet is supposed to do. There's a very fine line connection between the two. Both, one is human and the other is a supernatural being, and we make that distinction. But both are doing the same thing. Bring a message to the people. Now, the Bible does talk quite a bit about mankind's relationship with angels. And a big part of the book of Hebrews is there to show you that Jesus is greater than the angels. And one of my favorite ones is right there in chapter 1. If you've never read Hebrews 1, it's fantastic.
Well, I just want to back up though a little bit.
I'm sorry, we have no
you're
time
right.
to do
I
that.
know, but I was late, so I get to.
Okay, good point.
And it's good that we're not videoing this, so no one can see your angry face.
I am furious.
But I think like probably the reason I maybe trip over the idea of angels being disobedient is, and I'm going to say that I grew up this way, so that it makes me think that I've moved on, but I'm not sure that I have. I have this impression that angels are almost like AI, where it's like you input some commands and they're like, I will do what you tell me, and they go and do that. I don't know. Did you just shut me off?
No, I just was. Never mind.
He was turning it up. We want to hear it again.
I want to hear that robot voice more.
Like,
and more. This is my angel voice.
That could be a sweet stinger. I will do what you tell me.
Yeah,
But
so-
anyway, I think that's why I get tripped up a little bit with that, because I just never have thought. I don't think much, I guess, about angelic beings having personality and free will per se.
They totally do. I
And
don't know that it's possible to image God
Yeah.
without free will. And angels do image God. It matters how they act. They are to represent the kingdom of God to us, just as we are to represent the
And
kingdom
that makes
of
sense
God.
here, and you verbalize that. It makes sense to me. I just have never really thought
Well,
about
and it's
that.
one of those things that we kind of just brush over because
Right.
we dump all the angels in like one big imaginary pot, and we just pretend that there's not really much of a distinction between anybody, and except for like Michael and Gabriel, right?
Right.
Those guys have personality, and they're like the all-stars, and everyone else just has posters of them up on their walls.
Angels in the outfield.
Oh, it's such a good movie, yeah. But angels is a job. They're given a job. They're doing something. Are there supernatural beings who were not given a message to bring into this world? I would imagine that's the
Probably
vast
there is,
majority
yeah.
of supernatural beings. Just like the
Well,
vast
and I guess it
majority of
makes-
Israelites weren't called to be prophets.
It makes sense that, we always talk about how, the other side of eternity is going to be so much better. I can't wait to get to heaven because it's going to be this, it's going to be, but yeah, it's like, I think most of us, like, if I'm honest, late at night when I'm just by myself, I'm bored with heaven because life is where it's at. It's more fun here. My wife's here, my family's here. The things that I enjoy are here, and like most of the stories and things that we read of a spiritual existence is just a 24-hour worship service. And I'm
It's
a
not
worship
gonna be
leader.
that. It's
I'm
not
not
gonna be
excited
that.
about 24
and I'm
hour
not
worship.
trying to knock the worship service. I have no doubt that there are worship sets in heaven, okay, Steve?
No, I'm saying, like, as a worship leader, I hope there's not.
I am telling you, though, that heaven is a world.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. Is that, of course, it makes sense that there would be a huge amount of diversity.
And not only is there heaven as a world, but God is going to remake this world. That we
I
are
believe
going
that
to
too.
experience
yeah.
creation in a way that you can't even begin to imagine. Just
Well,
like
it just goes
explaining
back
to
to the
like,
Great Divorce, that we're experience a very broken version of it.
and it fills us with fear. It fills us with a sense of unknowing, but it's not something that is going. When you experience it, it will be like waking
I know.
a whole nother element. And so I think when you look at like Jesus, right? Jesus came into this world and it says he grew in knowledge and stature. He learned things. He wasn't like in the cradle, like, I'd like to teach you about the Pythagorean theorem, Father. Gather around as I just drop some knowledge on you. He grew. I think when we moved
Where'd
into
you
the
get
other
that? Gunther told me.
Gunther, yes, my good friend. I'm so sorry about this. Everyone out there named Gunther. It should have been a different name that popped in my head. But I want to jump. We're going to jump a little bit here.
We got off track. Sorry.
I got a couple other verses that you guys may want to look at. Hebrews 1, 7 through 9, Luke 2, 9 through 14, Romans 8, 38 through 39. But we're running out of time, so I'm going to move on down here to 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 14 through 15. And because this introduces the idea of Satan and angels into the same verse. And it says, no wonder then, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond with their deeds.
See, when I would have read
That's
that
pretty heavy.
an hour ago, it would have just registered to me that Satan is just switching sides. he's an angel of darkness, but he's disguising himself as an angel of light.
Mm-hmm.
But it's now, just going through what I've just learned, it's indicating that Satan wasn't an angel. Like, he's not designed to bring messages, but not only is he trying to disguise himself to be on the other side or to be on God's side, but he's also bringing a message to you.
He's a liar.
Exactly.
That's it. Yeah.
The message didn't come from God at all. It came from Satan.
And so many people will take this, Martin, to see like, Satan puts on a mask and he looks pretty, but really he's mean and you can't trust him. I don't think that's what it's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying he's disguising his message. The thing that he's bringing sounds like it brings life and it brings death. Mm-hmm. You don't believe me? Go read the whole Adam and Eve thing. Mm-hmm. She looked in the tree and she said, man, this is good. Like, I like what you're telling me here. He's not stopped that. Mm-hmm. This isn't about the physical description of Satan. I don't think it's talking about that.
Because Satan never got a message at all to bring to Eve.
Not that I know of.
Right. That's fascinating to me now.
What are you thinking, Rose?
I was thinking about in the book of John, I think it's 10, where it talks about the sheep and the fold, and the sheep know their voice. But it says that the thief comes to steal, kill, destroy. Jesus comes to give us life. And what you were saying there about him, the angel of light, is not so much that he's going to dress up like something really pretty, which I don't want to drag this out, but I just remember when I was working at a gift shop one time, it was a Christian gift shop.
So it was a good gift shop?
Well, I thought so until one day they unveiled the new tapestry they were selling, and it was called the Angel of Light. And it was an angel that, like, the tapestry literally had like twinkle lights in it you could turn on. It was beyond tacky, but like I said, it was the 90s.
I would have bought it. Totally would have bought it. I still would.
Yeah. But the thing is, what I'm saying is, at the time I thought, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, even I in my teenness knew what Angel of Light meant. And so what I'm saying here is, you're saying the message that he brings is what's disguised, but really it will kill and destroy and steal joy.
We get so focused on what the angels look like and trying to describe them in physical terms that we misunderstand the entire purpose of what an angel is. An angel is someone who is bringing a message, and he comes with a message, and it is a lie. And it is a lie that sounds like a truth that you want to be true. And so it then describes him and says he has disguised himself as a bringer of light. He's speaking these things. And he says, and it's no surprise then that his servants also do this same thing. Like, I grew up watching like Dudley Do Right, and you could always tell the bad guy in like Boris and Natasha with Moose and Squirrel and all that stuff. It was obvious. That's the bad guy. You can tell he's dressed all in black and he looks sketchy. It doesn't work that way. The supernatural world, the enemy doesn't present himself and say, hello, I'm Satan, and I'm interested, in converting you to Satanism and that sort of a thing. It's much more subtle than that. It brings something that sounds good, but the end thereof is destruction. There is a way that seemeth right to a man, and the end thereof is destruction. Angels are capable of bringing wrong messages, of twisting it to suit themselves. Here it seems to say that angel has his own servants, or that Satan has his own servants, who are bringing about lies, who are delivering untrue messages. So if someone tells me, well, a spirit told me this, that doesn't mean that it's true. Well, an angel told me this. Paul says, if I or an angel from heaven tell you something different, don't believe it. But that's not because angels are just obviously the right person and they can't lie. They can. They're just as capable of evil as the rest of creation.
That's interesting you bring that verse out, because I always just kind of assume that to be like a hyperbole a little bit that Paul's using, but maybe not.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think a great number of religious movements in human history began with someone saying, an angel appeared to me and said this. Right. Like, what if an angel really did appear to them and say that? Does that mean it's valid? If someone comes up to me and says, I have a message for you, God told me to say this, and then it doesn't square with Scripture, you have to say, no, God didn't tell you to say that. He doesn't contradict himself. Something is happening here. There are a lot of voices that would like your attention, and Satan is active in this. The angels, it says, who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling. In Jude 1:6, they have been kept in chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. There have been rebellions against God among the angelic courts. And I don't know if that's done. There's no verse in the Bible that says angels are incapable of sinning. I was taught in school that they were, and I went back over my notes to read why that is, and there was a note that says, because he said so. So apparently, even at the time, that was not sitting well with, freshman John as he was talking about this.
In all of his wisdom.
Well, this isn't the time to have the conversation, but I think it'd be interesting to talk sometime about like what do we do with what do we do with ourselves or other people that have a word from God that isn't necessarily unbiblical, but it's not like, I have a word from God and it's, X chapter, verse, whatever. It's
I think spiritual beings are capable of talking, just like humans are capable of talking. But if someone comes up to you with something that is anti-Christ and tries to present it as though it is from the kingdom, you need to know, no, it isn't.
Yeah.
God isn't saying, listen, I was wrong, but I'm sending down the editor. We're going to fix this. Don't worry.
No, I'm with you.
That's not something to put your trust and your hope in.
Yeah.
And that has happened. There are whole religious movements out there that exist this way.
I was thinking about, it's this quote, you are not a soul, a body with a soul. You are a soul with a body. Once upon a time, it was
Also
attributed.
C.S. Lewis.
You know what, John? I hate to do this, but it wasn't.
Come on.
No, it wasn't.
Don't tell me
it
that.
wasn't C.S. Lewis.
Who was it?
Well, then it went
Well,
on to
Tolkien,
George.
obviously.
No. It was George MacDonald.
Oh, okay.
Because but then
They're
it turns
pretty much-
out
That's that's the Holy Trinity.
One is the master.
there's another layer to this onion.
And one is the
Yeah.
student.
It's not even him. It's another man in some essay. And then it turns out it might have even had a base in like Gnostic heresy or something.
Oh,
so don't
wow.
get too excited about
No,
it.
I still like it.
I know, I do too. But the point is that
Not Gnostic heresy. I like the reality of soul.
right.
And that the body
Right.
is part of me, but it's not the totality
It is,
of
and
me.
that is where I was getting ready to go with this a little bit, is that we are souls that are encased in a body because that is how God made us. He did form us and breathe his breath into us. And so our bodies are also important because he says that they are.
Right.
But then where it says here in Ephesians, and this is pretty obvious, verse connection here, that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the principalities and the powers and the air and the rulers and all the things, the mighty powers of the dark world, whatever your translation says. But we, was it Paralandra? He says the fact that it says that means that we as flesh and blood are going to be doing the fighting. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but these bodies he created are going to be the ones that are doing the fighting, And so I guess one thing I'm wondering is, do you think, I know he does in Daniel, but does he still send angels to help these flesh and blood bodies as we battle against
Yeah, I think so.
spirits?
I think so.
So that would be what type of angel? Is
Well,
like
the
the
Bible
warrior.
calls them, ministering spirits.
Okay.
Is that they have been sent with a message, and the message sometimes can be an action. Go and help. Go and stand by. There's references when Jesus is done being tempted that the angels are there and they minister to him. The book of Hebrews talks about
Right.
he makes his angels ministering spirits or flames of fire. There is a very real sense in which I don't understand because I can't see it. I don't have a framework really for talking about it. And so rather than saying this is a fact
Right.
and I figured it out, I think it's wiser to simply look at how the Bible talks about these things and say, I don't know, but the Bible says this.
Well, and it's also just a little bit more information that you can gather to ponder on, and that God will bring things to you as he wants you to learn them and as he wants you to apply them to your life. And this is not something you can maybe wake up tomorrow morning and start applying, like what kind of angel
No,
was Satan,
yeah.
or whatever. But you are going to get up tomorrow morning and wrestle with principalities like that.
That's right.
That is going to happen. You need to get your armor out and get it on tomorrow morning.
And I think that knowing truth is important for the soul. God is going to create a new heaven and a new earth. I'm going to experience the world in a way that I can't even wrap my head around right now. And it isn't that one is more important than the other. I'm not just going to heaven, but God is going to bring heaven back upon the earth. Eden is coming again. There is a sense in which all of this is important. And so when you look at this and someone says, okay, yeah, but how do I apply this? Well, it may not have an immediate application. You may have to really think on this for a while, but it helps you to understand what God has said is so. And to rest in the words of God is beneficial for the soul. To simply say, this is what the Lord has said, and I know this because he says it. I may not understand it, and I have a bunch of questions, but it is healthy for the soul to think and to trust and to follow God's word. And so rather than simply saying, angels, you have an opinion, I have an opinion, and we're all right. I think it would give us, I think it would be good for us instead to say, what does the Bible say about them? Because they're not imaginary. There is a reality beyond the physical world that is more real than what we're experiencing now, because we're blind to a tremendous amount of what's happening. And I'm not saying the world isn't real. I don't want anyone out there thinking I'm some sort of, throwing labels at me, Platonist this or whatever. I'm simply saying that I'm not experiencing the world as it is.
We know it's real. Is it flat or round?
It's round. It's round. I saw the pictures.
Okay, sure you did.
I did.
On the internet.
On the internet, yeah, which everything on the internet is true.
100% true.
All right, well, you guys done making fun of me. We're going to talk about this
No.
some more. We're going to talk
not
about
done.
seraphim. We're going to talk about cherubim. We're going to talk about the watchers. We're going to talk about the sons of God. We're going to talk about the angel of the Lord and anything else that tickles our fancy out here. So if you've got thoughts or questions, send them in to us. And my friends, may God bless you, and I will talk to you some other time. I always push the wrong button.